and we're going to do the handout, and then we're going to take a look at a couple of cases that are a little bit different, but yeah, so we'll start with the sustainability handout and kind of go over that a little bit. Okay, let's take a look here. Okay, sustainability reporting requirements. And we'll talk a little bit more about what sustainability is. You guys probably, I'm sure you guys know it, but a little bit more in depth, I guess. So currently, they are not required by the SEC, and they're not only are they not required, obviously if they do put them out, they're not required to be audited, which we'll talk about in a minute. However, nearly 80% of the world's companies use the Global Reporting Initiative standards, which are sustainability standards. This is a kind of a little bit of a strange thing, and I'll tell you why. Most companies, when they do the reporting, they do pretty much the minimum. They don't have to do it. Generally, they don't. But sustainability is becoming such a big part of a corporate identity that many companies, especially larger ones, have found the pressure and the need and the want to do this reporting. So they actually do sustainability reporting. And just as an aside, if you're going into accounting, one of the things in the CPA firms they do is they do auditing. I think this is going to be a huge, absolutely huge field. So this may not be a bad field to get into if you if you're kind of future oriented. This is the hot topic of the day. Okay. Now, in the future, so right now nobody is required to do this, but in the future, and basically for some companies 2003, other ones 2023, 2024. So basically you're going to have most of your US companies by 2024 will be required, and the European, I should say European, international companies by 2024 will have requirements that they do have report on sustainability. Okay, I'm gonna, and by the way, there's a few different places that make standards. Global Reporting Initiative is by far the biggest, but they're not the only one. So I'm focusing on this because these are the largest most widely used, I guess, maybe the better way to put it. Okay, and they have their standards, as we'll get to in a minute. The standards are on the next page, but their standards, they have a few different options you can do for the standards. You can use their core standards, comprehensive option with all of their standards. So core standards are just the ones that are core to the business. Comprehensive ones are all their standards. And you can also pick and choose down here, but this is not considered to be in accordance with the standards. It's simply saying that they have been they are using this as a standard for their reporting, but they are not reporting completely with the GRI standards. These first two are the only ones that are recognized for companies if they want to say that they're in compliance with the Global Reporting Initiative. This one down here is just a claim that we've met the standards for part of it. Okay. So let's look at some of these standards. So Global Reporting Initiative is the largest one in the world. That's why we're using it. There are other organizations that do it, though. And they break things up into 3 different categories. The universal standards, the sector standards. Now there's a lot more sector standards, but these are the ones that I put on there, the first few. And then there's topic standards. The sector standards, there's a lot of these, but a lot of, these would be, some of the bigger ones, the ones that were the companies that people were more concerned about as far as sustainability. So a lot of times you had engineering companies, oil companies, energy companies, those sorts of things were the ones that people that felt the pressure to put out some kind of sustainability reporting for a number of reasons. First of all, they're obviously, if you're Exxon, you want to sell gasoline, you don't want people being mad at you. So you do things that hopefully will make people less mad at you, and you put that in you put that report. Say, look, we're going green, we're producing energy this way and that way and whatever. So those are the companies that kind of were first on in the list, but it goes for all companies. You'll have this for Walmart, Target, Nike shoes, all this kind of stuff. The sustainability thing is actually being driven by the companies themselves. They want to show that they are good citizens. They're good corporate citizens of the planet. So these sustainability things. Okay, now going down to the topic standards. And so these are topics. These topics will also be in, for some of these, in the sectors. So different sectors have different reporting standards. But if you look at these, there's quite a bit. They cover pretty much everything that you would want to see in a company. Economic performance, market presence, indirect brand. Okay, now getting into the fourth one here, they start looking at how do they actually buy stuff. Procurement practices is buying, anti-corruption, anti-competitive behavior, doing bad things in the market, their taxes, the materials and energies. Effluents are anything that's put into the water, anything that's put into the environment. And usually what they mean by that is put into the water or put into the air. They generally, you'll see in these sustainability reports, though, they generally separate out water. And I think that the effluents, they're really focusing on air emissions. So if you're looking at those two things thinking they're one and the same, they actually are, but for I guess for logical reasons that people would want those separated, that the effluents is mostly stuff that's put in the air. So water and air waste. Employment practices, training, occupational health, diversity, non-discrimination, freedom of association, child labor, and forced labor, rights of indigenous people. So you can see there's a whole lot covered here. Customer privacy. So this is a very thorough kind of statement, standards that you go to. Okay. Now here's the problem that they're facing right now with these standards. They have these standards and companies can use them. And the problem is they are not required to put these out. So a company is not required to put out these, and they won't be for another couple of years. So they're not required to put them out. Even if they do use them, they're not required to have anyone look at it and see if what they're putting down is accurate or not. So, there's no requirement that they get audited or that there's any verification of what they're putting down as for these sustainability reports. So that's the problem. The standards do not require, you can use their standards, at least for now, you can use them without having any verification. this is probably going to change, and probably pretty quickly. It's going to change, and that they're going to have to get some kind of a verification for these standards. And and you might think, well, what does it have to do with accounting? Like, nothing. Actually, CPA firms have turned out to be some of the best for doing these kind of audits. We'll talk about that in a little bit here. But so that you can use their standards, you're not required to, and the they're not required to be audited to them. There's no verification that companies are doing it. And this brings us up to greenwashing. And greenwashing is a problem. Greenwashing has been described as a type of fraud. Hey, look, I made it green. See, greenwashing. Okay. Greenwashing is practice of making unsubstantiated or misleading claims about the environmental benefits of product, a service, technology, or company practice. So it's when a company has unsubstantiated or misleading claims about being their sustainability. In other words, that they're work with the environment, they work with their employees, and so forth. And greenwashing can make a company appear more environmentally friendly than it is. This is just a citing. Put this in. Okay. So currently, companies can use GRI sustainability standards without any external verification. So no one is checking on their numbers. Well, they don't have to have it. In other words, companies may make misleading claims while referencing GRI sustainability standards. CPA firms and others can provide assurance for or verification services. Okay, top 500 companies in the US. So again, these are not required, but look, I mean, a giant, proportion of them, whatever that is, 87% or something, of the top 500 companies, they use report on sustainability standards. Uh, 282 of those companies get assurance or verification, so they get audits or reviews, which I'll talk about in a moment. 155 are put out without assurance. So they put out the standards. They did not get any kind of verification from any third-party external reviewers to say that their numbers are accurate. And then there's 63 who do not put out any standards, sustainability standards. And so that's 500 companies. So, and here's kind of the wild thing, remember, these are not required. It's not required that you do these. So when you see that, whatever it was, 86%, something like that, of the Fortune 500 companies are doing it, it means that there's a huge drive, and that there's obviously, they're doing this for a reason. They think that there's a value to it. Companies don't spend a dime on anything they don't want to, but apparently they're ready to fork out the money for this because they believe that it's probably, they believe it's a good right thing to do, but also it's one of those things that people are looking for. Okay. The GRI sustainability standard. I'm going to hide and bold all these. First one, the GRI sustainability standards apply to all the following except anyone? You guys aren't talking to me. Okay, fine.
Is it C?
Yep, very good. C. Yeah, management background information we don't do, but these other things they do, employment issues, environmental factors, obviously, but customer information privacy, that's also another thing they do. Sustainability reporting is what the requirements are. Let's see. I just realized that the D is the answer here, but it kind of doesn't go along with the sustainability reporting will be. I should take the is off there, but it's required it'll be required for some U.S. and international companies in the future. And the reason why I say some U.S. companies, because only those companies that are publicly traded would ever be required to have that. Companies that are not publicly traded, the government has no, the federal government, our federal government has no jurisdiction over them. Okay, the GRI standards are boy, did I write this wrong? B and C are good. I gotta redo these. So it's actually, this one's gonna be D, the universal standards. They do not include auditing standards, at least not at the current time, but they do have the universal standards are up here. These first three are universal standards. And companies using GRI sustainability standards must have a CPA firm. What are those sustainability departments? Environmental agency. They do not need to have a. So it's not required that they have any audit of those. Okay. Away from these poorly worded multiple choice questions. Okay, CPAs versus non-accounting issuers. First of all, this is a study done that companies that have someone look at their reporting for the sustainability, they're 1.8 times more likely to detect or correct errors. That's probably expected. The one that probably isn't as much as highly expected was this one. The odds of accounting assurers detecting errors in sustainability reporting was more than double that of non-accounting assurers. So you have accounting firms doing the audits of these sustainability reports. You also have people who are not accounting people, not CPA firms, doing the same thing. They're doing the giving assurance services, and that it's kind of incredible a little bit that the auditors, the CPA firms, are more than two times more likely to find errors in the sustainability reports. Now, it's not probably because the CPA firms know more about environmental factors, carbon output and all that kind of stuff. My guess is these other firms, I'm sure they have PhDs and everything else working for them, that they probably know way more than the CPA firms do. The problem is, and this is just a guess, but they are not used to doing audits. And audits are wacky. If you guys had me for any of the audit classes or someone else in the audit class, you know that auditing is kind of wacky. It's not intuitive a lot of times. So my guess would be that it's not an intelligence thing. It's more just as auditors think in auditor ways, then they are better at finding issues, regardless of what the criteria is. That you can always audit. You can audit to any criteria as long as it's a valid criteria. Okay. So down here, generally corporate social responsibility. This is another word for sustainability. There's all kinds of these things, by the way. There's all kinds of little little phrases that mean the same thing. So generally, corporate social responsibility assurances are best performed by CPA firms. And my guess would be that the reason we're better at it is that we're used to doing audits. Okay. Levels of assurance with CPA firms provide. Now, here's something that is unique kind of to the CPA firms that I think a lot of people don't know, is that we'll often do stuff that's not just financial statements. If there is criteria that we can verify, that there's something, we have to be able to match it up against some criteria. Now, we do that for the financial statements. We say, okay, do these financial statements conform to this criteria, which we call GAAP, generally accepted accounting principles? We will audit to see, okay, are they complying with this set of criteria, GAAP? But you can do that with other things too. If there is a valid set of criteria that you can use to verify the numbers, you can give an assurance about it. And there's two different kinds, and we'll talk about it in a second. But as long as there are some valid criteria that you can use, you can take these, and it could be anything. I don't know if I told you this or not, but I had a friend who worked in Texas, and I guess in Texas they have absolutely massive ranches with cattle on them. They're like thousands of miles or whatever acres, and these cattle just kind of walk around. Then so when once or twice a year or whatever, they round them all up and bring them in. And my friend would work for the CPA firm, and they would stand out there in suits, and they would count the cattle coming in. They're crazy, and they would actually issue a report saying that there was, whatever 11,322 head of cattle, came into the whatever, and they'd issue a report on it. So anytime there's a measurable criteria, you can, whether it's counting cattle or how many tons of carbon are you putting in the atmosphere, you can do a report on it. Okay, and these are usually the two types of options that are available for us to do this. This is what they call attestations. You're attesting to something. An examination is the same thing as an audit. And that, I think we've talked about this before, gives reasonable assurance. They express an opinion on it. And we do active testing. So they are actively tested, the examination. So examination, this is the highest level. Put that in here. Oops, don't do that. So an audit, it's called an examination, is the highest level. And we actively go out and we test things to see if they are, what they say they are. We'll count the head of cattle, whatever it is. We actively go out and test those things. These are the highest level. These are also, as you may imagine, the most expensive. Okay, a review, less expensive. In review engagements, we are basically looking for we give limited assurance, and we basically look over the data and make sure that there is any, and see if there's anything that looks to be out of place. And if there is, we investigate it. So there's the difference. Auditing, we test everything. So we test everything, and we test it to the criteria, whatever it is that that is set up. For a review, we will look at the data and see if there's anything that looks peculiar. So for instance, if their carbon output drops by 15%, that's quite a bit. That's a lot. Okay, well, we got to go take a look at that, because that seems very strange that in 1 year they would drop, how much carbon they put out by 15%. This, seems a little bit more than you would expect. 1 or 2%, maybe, but these, some large amounts. So it isn't that you don't do any testing. You're not going to do anything, looking into any of the numbers if you do a review, but you're looking at the data and seeing if there's anything that that would indicate that there is a mistake. Okay, so it's a little bit different. It's sort of like, does anything come to our attention that needs to be looked at? That's kind of what a review is. What comes to our attention, what jumps out is, no, that can't be right, or that seems funny, So it is because you don't do all the testing, it's less expensive. And basically the assurance you give is nothing has come to our attention. We didn't notice anything that would indicate that these are misstated. And they do these for financial statements too. When I was going through accounting, the review statement was kind of new. It was a few years old. But basically, in the past, they could only either do audits or not. That was it. And so the review statement came about because you'd have companies that would want to, the bank would want to have some kind of an assurance that, hey, is this company, how are they doing? And, maybe the company makes $160,000 a year. And the auditors come in, how much would the audit be? The audit would be, $60,000. Well, does that make sense? You made 160,000, a big chunk of your income is going to go just to paying for the auditors. And so they kind of came up with this review. A review is less assurance, but more reasonable. So instead of $60,000, maybe a review is 6,000. Well, okay, we can do 6,000. Then the bank will be happy. So a review is sort of like kind of like a mini audit, but it's less extensive than an audit. But that's for any, almost anything. So whenever you see examination or audit, that's the highest level. A review is less. Okay, you still look at stuff. You're looking for things that are strange, but you don't do the massive amount of testing that you do for auditing. Okay, company's decision to use only the core option. or the comprehensive option has no impact on the level of assurance. In other words, if you use this is a lower option, the core option. If you use a core option, you can still get an audit. You can have an audit for the core option. Or, you have this comprehensive option, which is everything. You might have a review for the comprehensive option. Okay. All right. So next thing, let's pull up the Unilever. I think it's Unilever. There's two things for Unilever. There's a report, and then there is the data. And let me share my screen. Okay, so let's see. This is the report. This is a report by a CPA firm. Doesn't have to be a CPA firm. We'll see. Apple doesn't use a CPA firm. Okay, so this is PwC. This is PricewaterhouseCoopers. I'm not sure what their official name is now, but PwC is a CPA firm. And you'll notice that this says nothing has come to our attention to cause us to believe that select information has not been prepared. No material specs and blah, blah, blah. Okay, so nothing has come to our attention. Oops. Are they getting an examination or a review? So here's the report. Nothing has come to our attention. So which are what kind of report is this? Is this an audit report, an examination, or is this a review? Anyone? Hey, you guys are sleeping. All right, I'll go ahead and answer it. It's a review. Nothing has come to our attention. They're going to review. This is the less expensive one. Now, notice they're not required to have this done anyways. So I guess getting the less expensive one is not that big of a deal. But it's a review. It's a limited assurance, but it is that someone had looked at this, and you'll notice that they don't say our opinion. They're not giving an opinion. It's not an audit. Okay. So anyway, you notice that this report goes on for a while. So 4 pages. Yeah. So it's like 4 pages of stuff. But anyway, so this is the audit report. And again, this is limited assurance, but it is assurance. Someone has looked at it and been satisfied that it is not materially misstated. Okay, let's go to the data and just kind of see the stuff that they have. Okay, so there's a number of pages of data here. Actually, these are all separate. I put them together just so we didn't have 9 spreadsheets. But you'll notice that they talk about how much of their CO2 emissions are, and it looks like they dropped quite a bit. Market-based, I'm not sure what that means, but then they have a location-based and some data per ton and all this kind of stuff. Hazardous waste. So this one's kind of this kind of has a little bit of everything in there. Now here's a little bit more of the detail stuff. If you go to the second sheet, and you'll notice that this is, these don't look, if you take a look at these, those don't look that different than financial statements. I mean, they have like the year to year, and this looks fairly familiar. I mean, you could actually go and say, okay, say you have 144,000 tons of scope 2, whatever those are, GHG emissions, and see how they came up with it. And this is why they're doing it, by the way. They're showing this huge reduction. Oops, let's not do that. It was a million tons in 2016, and now it's down to 144 tons, 144,000 tons in 2021. And this is a reason why companies would want to do this, put out these kind of reports. People look at this and say, yay, we want to invest in that company or buy their products or whatever it is. Wastewater. Number 3 or 4, water stewardship. I'm not sure what that is. Oops. Environmental fines and prosecutions. So here, they'll list what they did, how many times they got hit with something. Why don't I see the footnote? Where's the E footnote? Oh, restated. Did they hit with a? Oh, so 75,000 euros by the fine by the South African environmental authorities. Okay, so that's what this one is. Safety work. That was a little eye-opening. 7 people killed. By the way, I think I told you, I know I told you, I was an auditor for U.S. Steel. And U.S. Steel, they used to have, they didn't have any fatalities in the factory when I was there, but it was not that uncommon. They have big, hot molten steel and big trucks and all this stuff, and a very dangerous place to work even today. But yeah, so they, one of the things that would happen is if there was a fatality, that as internal auditors, the authorities would be called in, police and all that kind of stuff. The OSHA would be called in, the occupational health and safety people would come in, and somewhere along the line, the internal auditors would go in and write up a report about what, basically what happened, based on everything we get from everybody around, regardless of what the other authorities put in, we would go objectively in and see it. And ours was obviously to keep this from ever happening again. That's something you don't want to do. The one that we had when I was there was a really bizarre one. There was a guy that you can think I'm making this up, but there's a guy that used to eat hot peppers every day at lunch. There's a guy that used to sit next to him, and it always would bother him and wanted to have these hot peppers. He said, no, these are really hot. You don't want to have these. Finally, he said, okay, fine. He gave the guy a hot pepper. The guy started hyperventilating, had a heart attack, and died eating a hot pepper, and that was the only one that happened when I was there, and it was what a bizarre thing. And the guy that gave him the pepper was just like beside him. He didn't know what to do. He was one of the craziest thing, especially at a steel plant. Um, that's not usually how the things happen. Okay, nutritional performance, and you can look at it reducing calories, and I don't know what else here, salt, and their products, and listed by country. Pretty comprehensive stuff. Community investment. And they go down here and they'll say what percentage of it was in cash, percentage of it was in kind. In other words, we gave services or products or something like that, employee time, and oops. So again, this is something you don't usually see in accounting. And this is the workforce and the different makeups, mostly just by male, female here. I'm sure that there are more specific ones out there that have more categories and races and religions and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, this is a fairly this is a lot of stuff. This is a lot of information. And again, as long as we can get criteria, we can report on it. So as long as we can get information, we can make a report on it. And that's what they did. Basically, this is what PricewaterhouseCoopers, this is what they looked at when they gave the report. Okay, last thing, we're gonna get done early tonight. Last thing is the Apple report. Let's pull that up. And this report is more commonly what you're going to see if you look on their website. It's sort of like an annual report for the financial statements. The financial statements, if you look at their annual report, it looks great. Even if they're losing tons of money, they could be going bankrupt. But if you look at the annual report, there's all these happy people, and they're all, and the same thing here. So you go through all of it, and it's going to be kind of management spin. This is very high end. Hey, why am I'm stuck? Where are we going? And somewhere down near, though, you want to get to the end where you're going to get the actual data, and it's usually about halfway down, maybe a little more like a little more than halfway down. Here we go. Appendix. So this is on page 84, it looks like. And so this is where you get these, like for instance, the greenhouse, the scope 1 gross emissions. Looks like it's going up for Apple. Coming here to the methodology, and this is one of those things that you would audit too. Energy usage. This looks like it's also going up. So this looks like water usage is also going up. normalizing factor. Oh, I get it. I get what they're saying here. So here, I think what they're saying here, normalizing factors are that the sales have gone up considerably. The number of employees have gone up. You would naturally think that, it will go up. Now, whether they went up for the same amount or not. And I think they have some, I think this is some of their, this is a carbon footprint. But you can see this is all data that we could easily, look at. Okay, now here at the very bottom of this thing, this is the report. Assurance and review statements. Now, you'll notice that this is not what we're used to seeing when we see a report. And you say, well, why? Why don't they use that same the same report that the CPA firm uses? The CPA, the standard audit reports and the standard review reports are copyrighted material that can only be used by CPAs. And that's because the AICPA says those are our copyrighted reports. You can't use those unless you're a CPA. Now, this firm that is doing the assurance for Apple is not a CPA firm. They cannot use the reports that are used by the CPA firms. So every one of these companies is probably gonna have a report that's a little bit different. And this one, you notice that I still have it up. No, I don't. The Unilever report, you'll notice that right at the beginning is, right off the bat, it said what the what the conclusion was. Whereas this one, it goes into a little bit more data before they actually come out and say what it is. The reason I bring that up is that if you are trying to, see what the conclusions are, a lot of times you'll have to dig for a little bit. And here is data you will never, here's a write-up you'll never see from a CPA firm. Apple's assessment approach is excellent in terms of granularity used calculation of data. You'll never see, CPA firms are prohibited from being an advocate for a client. You cannot say they're excellent. You're simply making an objective look at their financial statements or whatever you're looking at. I thought that was funny. Excellent. Good people. Okay, so anyway. Again, the excellent analysis. So this is a firm that is not a CPA firm, and this is obviously their report. And again, there's nothing to say that they're not qualified. It's more likely that they're just not. You can probably tell you can't be an advocate for a client and be objective at the same time. They're just probably not used to the auditing aspect of it, and that you have to be unbiased and that kind of stuff. So anyway, that is it for sustainability. That's it for the class. I got the last test I got to put out. Quite honestly, I probably won't get that out till Friday, but you'll have until, this class goes to the 16th, doesn't it? So you'll have a couple weeks to get it in. See something here. Quick check. It'll be on the 60th. It'll be doing the 60th. It says the 17th here. That's for Saturday classes. So it'll be doing the 60th. So I'll get that out. I'll get the last test out will be, by the way, the last test is going to focus more on chapter 11 than the other ones, than 10 and 12, just because it's a bigger area, maybe a more, say more important area, but an area more aligned with accounting and auditing. So anyway, I'll get that test out by Friday, and again, you'll have 16 days. What's Friday the 2nd, I think. So you'll have 2 weeks to get it in. Any questions? Okay, I will be back here again next week for any questions, any follow-ups, anything that people want any help on. But if not, great having you guys, and I will hopefully see you again in the future. All right, but I will be here next week, and I'll be here also on the following week too. So, okay. See you.